Yes?
Dr. Gillis, you talked about the flip side of the info bio nano story. What is Rice doing to address the ethical concerns that researchers must consider as they're
Well, of course, we have some joint appointments in that field with the Texas Medical Center. And we've lost an important person in that undertaking last year, and we're going to try to make up for it. Our biggest problem, by the way, when people ask me what our biggest problem is, I always say protecting ourselves from these damned raiding parties from the East Coast and West Coast universities. So what we're talking about is an ethical thicket in biomedicine and particularly in genetics. And none of us really have thought very much about how we're going to handle it. And so we need to be devoting some very serious systematic thinking to this, and Rice is going to be a part of this.
Can you speak more specifically to that? Will there be interdisciplinary studies?
There already is an interdisciplinary program involving Rice and Baylor College of Medicine. Okay? We just need to replace a couple of key people who have been lured away from some of these universities with $19 billion endowments. You know which one I'm talking about. Yes?
Dr. Gillis, last year, Business Week had a sort of large article about Stanford and its relationship with the business community and Silicon Valley, and sort of the ebb and flow between the money coming into Silicon Valley and the money coming into Stanford and so on. What do you see as in Rice's future where business partnerships could work?
Well, for one thing, there's part of the Stanford model that we have shamelessly adopted. Okay? There's a continuum in transfer of technology, and it ranges from the highly restrictive, like from a state university being told, what are you doing giving away our patrimony, all the way over to Stanford, which is let's get the hell out of the way so that these marvelous discoveries can get out into society and try to improve levels and quality of living. We are much more on the Stanford end of the continuum on purpose, because we believe that efforts to try to hold on to technology, to try to get the last squeal from the eagle as we pinch the dollar, we believe these are doomed to failure and are counterproductive. But most important, we are a university, and it's our job to make sure that the technology that we do develop, the discoveries that we do develop, and the technology that arises from that does need to get out of society. That is the Stanford model. You will note that in our contractual provisions on royalties and on equity are very similar to those of Stanford. But we believe that if we are proven, proven transfers of good technology, that people will remember this as time goes on and support our work. And I'll give you a perfect example. I told you about the field called digital signal processing. Okay? And I told you that it's actually much more than half, but I don't like to exaggerate. It's actually much more than half of Texas Instruments' product line is based on this technology, which was largely developed at Rice. Okay? About 5 years ago, Texas Instruments presented us with a check for $7 million. Instructions: keep doing what you've been doing. Well, this happens at Stanford, except sometimes it's $200 million. But we believe that this is the way that you do these things. And we don't want to be like a dragon guarding treasure and sitting on discoveries and inventions that can be used by society for helping people. But we're also not going to be... The last thing that the United States and the world needs is a university that thinks it's a business. Because then it'll be a mediocre... It'll be certainly a mediocre university, and I guarantee you a mediocre business. Okay? Now we don't need that, and that's not where we're going to be. I read all this stuff about greater corporatization of universities. I keep saying, give me an example. And people give me examples of some places elsewhere, but I say, well, give me one here. They haven't been able to do it yet. But I'm still listening. Yes?
Dr. Gillis, could you comment on what position and intentions for Rice
First of all, we have to understand that if it's just my vision, it's not worth a darn. Okay, it's got to be a vision that has been arrived at by people who really care. And I count myself among those, but I have a lot of colleagues on the faculty and in the administration who really care. And what I'm concerned about are people who want to make a good life and not just a good living. I'm concerned about people who can write and convey in at least one language, and I hope more than one. Okay? I'm concerned about people who understand that there's a systematic way of approaching moral problems, and it is called ethics. And you don't have to teach them Christian or Judeo-Christian or Muslim ethics. What you have to teach them is that there are these alternative ways of looking at the world that is systematic and helpful in looking at moral questions. And the morals can be based on whatever religious or atheistic principles you wish to have them. But they still will be moral principles. So I guess I want to see people who when they finish Rice, they know about a discipline. But I don't want to see specialists. I want to see people who can write and speak and who are a little bit cosmopolitan. That's why we're pushing overseas study. This is a transforming experience for our students. Particularly, you have to understand that our students come from a socioeconomic part of society where household income is $30,000 to $40,000 less than your Princetons and your Browns. Okay? And this is very good. We like this a lot. Okay? We are very proud of it. But we'd like for them to leave with a little more cosmopolitan view of the world. And overseas study is one of the ways we do it. It'll transform them and almost always transform them for the better. Not always, but almost always. That's kind of the long and the short of it. Harry?
He didn't talk about research. It seems to me to be a major part of what the university is about. You know, I don't have to talk backwards. You sort of missed a big part of it. Yeah. But I wonder if you would talk about what you think will happen in the large field of the universities and colleges as they exist today. Will there be a closing down, you think, of a lot of universities and colleges as big business gets into the act?
No, I don't strongly think that. And I have some reasons for feeling that way. Another great university in this country has just invested $10 million in a teaching technology. It's Columbia. That they're going to have to save that $10 million, they're going to have to either invest another $25 million or watch the whole thing go belly up. All of these expectations of great riches and transforming higher education over the net were expectations that were founded on about the same basis as the view that stocks of companies that never made money could keep going up. You know, so I think that the universities with intelligent faculties and intelligent leadership will be able to seize upon a lot of the opportunities offered by the information revolution, including our own Connections project, which we hope will transform the way people learn over the net. And also through our own Renee project, Rice Networks Everywhere. But these are going to enrich what is already an interactive experience between us and our students, graduate and undergraduate. And I honest to God, don't see any substitute for that. And now, the people, the cognitive people who are looking at internet learning are saying that. They're beginning to say that too. You know, there really is not. I once had a wonderful course for non-credit in Russian literature. And I got up at 6:30 in the morning to watch it. And I was in college. And it was great because the guy was great. And I only wished I could have been there to ask him questions. Well, today I might ask him questions interactively, but it wouldn't be, then he'd have to turn to somebody else, maybe 5,000 someone else's. And he wouldn't have been able to tell me why it was. Why was Dostoevsky so crazy? Okay? And why did Anna Karenina, what was in her background, Anna Karenina, that made her be... I wanted to know all of these things, and I don't think you can learn that on the net. And here, we're talking about humanities here. We're not talking about science and engineering, which is, interaction is even more critical. The guy or the woman who's designing your bridge or your superstructure, you want to make sure that person had plenty of chances to interact with the professor who taught structures and strength of materials, and rather than someone who was, pressing on the screen of a television, don't you? I do. And I certainly want that surgeon who's coming at me with those little scalpels. I don't want him to have learned over the University of Phoenix wires. Huh? It may be okay for him to keep up with technology and medicine that way, although our colleagues across the street put a whole pile of money into this kind of thing and wanted us to invest, and we said, no, we'd love to, we want to help you out. Of course, they lost it all. Of course, I tell you, we have made our own expensive mistakes in the new technology, and we're going to make more. Okay, it's inevitable, but we just try not to do the $25 million ones. Yes? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there, what is the faculty response here, and how do you hope to pass on those fears about time?
I found that our faculty in that field have a real good idea about how to utilize their time to bring this stuff about. We don't try to direct them. We just kind of wind them up once a year, and they go and do what they do. And they do it very well, but we don't presume to know to tell them how to do it. But we do try to provide an environment where they got good other faculty to interact with, and good students, graduate and undergraduate, and good facilities. We think if we've done that, we've done our job. And then sometimes we want to hook them up. The discoveries are interesting. We want to hook them up with the private sector. We're now doing that more and more with something called Rice Alliance. More about, that's another topic, altogether different. But this is for our students and for our faculty and our alumni who think they've got some discoveries that they want to see get out into society. Yes?
From your perspective, how do you explain to undergrads today the need to invest in university where the payoff won't be until undergrads on the far of the journey?
I've never known smart undergraduates that had to be drawn a picture on that.
But there are a lot of undergrads today who are complaining about
Oh yeah, well, so it has always been. Look, when I first started teaching, what was it? How old am I? 36 years ago. I used to be enraged by the question, is this going to be on the test? And I say, for you, friend, everything I say is going to be on the test, if that's the way you look at it. As undergraduates mature, they get over this, okay? However, professors teach out of a textbook or out of yellowed old notes, undergraduates have a perfect right to say, why are we learning this? And at other universities, this unfortunately happens more often than you might think. Now and then here, but not too much. I have a factor, it's called the Gillis factor, and it's the proportion of faculty who have retired in situ. You know what I mean by retired in situ? At Harvard, I used to think it was about 1 in 8. At Duke, I thought it was about 1 in 10. And at Rice, I think it's less than 1 in 20. Partly because of the engagement that our faculty has with undergraduates. It's just, people get up in the morning and they look forward to coming to campus rather than dread it. These young men and women and their graduate students who charge you up, and life is interesting. But that's partly because we've stayed small and we know one another. I think I told you, I didn't tell this group, but when I was at Harvard, I used to overseas have to introduce Harvard faculty members to each other from the same department. Huh? I'll never forget sitting beside Kenneth Arrow, Nobel Prize winner at Harvard, in the Christmas Hanukkah Tet party, because you know, it's all those things. It was in late December. And somebody would walk in the door, and I'd only been at Harvard 2 years, and Arrow, who's a really sweet and bright guy, said, "Who's that?" I said, "Professor Arrow, that's so-and-so. He's been here for 8 years." "Who's that?" "Well, that's so-and-so. He came, or she came 5 years ago." They know each other. That wouldn't happen in economics. It might have happened in the economics department here 10 years ago, but it won't happen now. Yes, that's both.
I know for understandable reasons you talk a great deal about science.
Yeah, because it's easier.
I know, and science research and nanotechnology is something exciting and so forth. And then when we talk about humanities, it's always teaching undergraduates to write and ethics and travel abroad and so forth. I'd like to hear some of your thoughts about a balanced university and absolutely first-rate cutting-edge research in the humanities.
Yeah. Well, first, let's say here that deeds are more important than thoughts. Okay? And when I say to you that the humanities faculty at Rice has increased at a faster rate by far than all other faculties in the last 8 years, you know that's true. Okay? When I tell you that the library is focused on the needs for humanities, not just in teaching but research, you know that's true. Okay? When I tell you that we have enacted for the junior faculty in humanities something we don't have for other faculty yet, and that's special research grants that they get simply by writing a one-paragraph description. So I could talk about the Center for Study of Cultures and how that integrates so many things in humanities. The only problem is that because of my background, I find it easier to explain these linkages in the sciences and engineering and in some areas of economics and management than I do fields where I am far less expert. Okay? But the linkages between these fields and the kind of research going on in humanities, I think we have shown from our actions that we value that at least as much as any other field, because we have been putting our money there, and there is no more sincere testament than that, if you're looking at results. But if someone could help me, I think I understand something of some other social sciences other than economics. I think I understand something of many fields in the humanities, particularly in some literature. But I cannot speak with the same degree of confidence about linkages as I can in these other fields that I've been talking about. Sometimes I apologize for that, and sometimes I don't. So one other question?
Talk to us a little bit about our responsibilities for the K through 12 at Rice.
Well, we have no less than 62 programs of outreach to public education K through 12. Why? Because there's not a more important issue in society, in American society today, than improving and reversing the decay in public education, K through 12. There is simply not an issue more important. And so we've got to try to help people sort through all of these options that are coming at them. We've got to figure out ways. Our outreach programs are focused on students, and they're focused on teachers. And we find that teachers come and tell us these are wonderful things, but now you've got to help us to get politically changes that we need. And we say, look, you have to understand something. We are not gifted that way. Huh? We are no more capable of bringing about political change than you are. Okay? But we can make sure you're better informed, and we can make sure that you understand that these programs that we have in model science labs and in being a scientist for the summer, most of these are focused, by the way, on on minorities, just because where we live. This is in Harris County and the Rio Grande Valley. But we don't, they're not all for minorities. We're interested in helping people improve public education, not just in the social sciences and in the humanities, but in science and engineering and mathematics. What you got to do is to stay on the backs of your elected officials and make sure that they're delivering. You got to make sure that people do not close their minds to possibilities that might be worth a try. Okay? Some form of vouchers, I say that word and people cringe, may be worth a try to shock the system, because it certainly needs shocking. But I know about as many problems of vouchers as I know good points. But I'm just saying that there are a lot of things that are worth a try, and I am appalled at the degree to which people close their minds to some of these things. Yes?
Communication is a serious form of flattery. What are your comments about how Brennan fits into crisis?
Well, you know, this is something that could either work very, very well or not at all. And we have been supplying brain power to it. It is difficult working across cultures, even across people of Northern European extraction. Because bureaucracies and attitudes are different in German higher education than there are here. Particularly, there's not any private education on the European continent. Oh, there's some schools, business schools, but there's no private universities. And so this is a big bite out of the apple. The reason they came to us was because it is understood fairly widely among those who have thought about it in Germany that German and French higher education, for example, are not suited for the 21st century in terms of getting the kinds of skills and understanding and technologies that are necessary to live and do well. So we're working with it, and we're hoping that it will be a success, because if so, it will help turn around higher education in all of continental Europe. And if that happens, we will have been among those who took an idea that was developed in Germany in the mid-1800s, the idea of the research university, and brought it to our shores, and then turned around and re-exported it back somewhat improved. And that's a worthwhile undertaking, even if it doesn't work. And I sure hope it will, but as I keep telling my colleagues in Bremen, it won't work unless, in the famous words of Captain Picard, we make it so. And what this means is you got to stay on it all the time. And I'm not sure that that's understood yet.